conference room door slammed open at 9:14 a.m. Serafina Blackwell's heels struck the factory floor like gunshots. Workers froze mid-motion, hands hovering over controls, conversations dying mid-sentence. The machines still roared, but somehow the silence underneath felt louder. She didn't need to raise her voice. Power never does. Her slate gray suit was pressed sharp enough to cut. Her eyes swept the floor until they landed on him. Elias Monroe, standing beside Machine 7, work gloves still on, face already resigned like he'd been expecting this moment his whole life. "You violated protocol," Serafina said. Not loud, not soft, just final. Elias's jaw tightened. His hands dropped to his sides. "I notified my supervisor. Your personal circumstances," she cut in, each word precise as a blade, "are not my concern." The air went dead. Around them, 60 workers suddenly found their shoes fascinating. Nobody looked up. Nobody moved. They'd all learned the same lesson. Witnessing made you complicit, and complicit made you next. "You're terminated, effective immediately." Elias nodded once, slow, controlled. No argument, no pleading, no scene. He reached for the worn backpack hanging behind him, movements careful like he was defusing a bomb instead of packing up his life. He pulled off his gloves, folded them with the kind of precision that only comes from years of repetition, and set them on the workstation. That quiet dignity made Serafina's teeth clench. She wanted resistance, wanted proof she was right to do this, proof that he was unprofessional, emotional, unstable. Instead, he just looked tired. 10 minutes, she added. Security will escort you. 10 minutes. That's what 15 years of loyalty earned. Hi, friend. Before we continue the story, kindly tell us where you are watching from. And hit that subscribe button now for you to get more. And I have something new for you tomorrow. Stay tuned. Thanks. Let's continue. Elias walked toward the exit, backpack slung over one shoulder. His steps didn't falter, didn't rush. Behind him, a younger worker, Marcus, started to move forward, mouth opening like he wanted to say something. His supervisor grabbed his arm, shook his head hard. "Don't." Serafina watched Elias's back disappear through the double doors. Watched the way his shoulders stayed straight, even though his world had just collapsed. She told herself this was necessary, clean, justified. Men like him were always the same, too soft, too distracted, too weighted down by things that didn't belong on a factory floor. The company couldn't afford weakness. She turned on her heel and walked back toward the administrative wing, already mentally filing the incident away under handled. But that night at 7:42 p.m., everything changed. Serafina's black sedan eased through evening traffic 3 blocks from the factory. She was reviewing quarterly projections on her tablet when movement outside the window caught her eye. A bus stop. A man crouched low, 2 small figures pressed against him. Her breath stopped. Elias Monroe, but he wasn't alone. A girl, maybe 6, clung to his side, face buried in his jacket. A boy, older, 9 or 10, stood rigid beside him, eyes scanning the street like a soldier on watch. Children. Serafina's fingers tightened on the tablet. That didn't fit. That wasn't part of the story she'd told herself. "Stop the car," she said. Her driver glanced in the rearview mirror. "Ma'am?" "Now." The sedan pulled over 2 car lengths behind the bus stop. Through tinted glass, Serafina watched Elias crouch to the children's level, his mouth moving in words she couldn't hear. His hand cupped the back of the girl's head, gentle, protective. The boy didn't cry. He just stared straight ahead, shoulders too tense for someone that young. Something cold twisted in Serafina's chest. Not guilt. Curiosity, she told herself. Risk management. "Follow them," she ordered. The bus came. They didn't get on. Instead, Elias stood, took both their hands, and started walking. Not toward downtown, not toward anything polished or clean. They walked 15 minutes through streets that didn't appear in travel brochures, past chain-link fences, past storefronts with metal grates pulled down, past streetlights that flickered like dying heartbeats. The building they entered looked like it was holding itself up through sheer stubbornness. Serafina stayed in the car, engine idling, watching shadows move behind thin curtains on the third floor. She told herself she was ensuring no legal complications, that this was due diligence. She was lying, because inside that apartment, something was happening that would unravel everything she believed about power, and she couldn't look away. What do you think Serafina will discover behind those curtains? The apartment lights came on dim and yellow, the kind that buzz even when nobody's listening. From the car, Serafina watched shadows shift behind threadbare curtains. 3 figures, small movements, no television glow, no music, just the quiet existence of people trying not to take up too much space in the world. Her driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, should I?" "Stay here." She didn't know why she opened the door, didn't know why her feet carried her across the cracked sidewalk toward the building entrance. The lobby door hung loose on its hinges, propped open with a brick. Inside smelled like old cooking oil and detergent that couldn't quite mask the mildew underneath. Serafina climbed the stairs in heels that clicked too loud, each step feeling like trespassing. She'd closed billion-dollar deals in boardrooms across 3 continents, but this narrow stairwell made her feel exposed in a way glass towers never had. 3rd floor, door 3C. She stopped just outside, hand raised but not knocking. Through the thin door she heard water running, a child's voice, the girl's, soft and uncertain. "Daddy, are we going to have spaghetti again?" A pause. Then Elias, voice carefully steady. "Not tonight, baby. We're having something better." "What's better than spaghetti?" "Eggs and rice. Your favorite." It wasn't her favorite. Serafina could hear the lie in his voice, the kind parents tell when they're pretending scarcity is a choice. More sounds. A pan scraping across a stovetop. A cabinet opening and closing too quickly, like he was checking what was inside and already knew the answer would disappoint. The boy spoke next, older, sharper. "We had eggs yesterday." "Then you know they're good," Elias replied. "We had them because we didn't have anything else." Silence, heavy and thick, and full of truths nobody wanted to say out loud. Serafina's hand dropped to her side. She shouldn't be here. This was invasive, wrong. But she didn't leave. "Noelle," Elias said quietly, "come help me set the table." Chairs scraped, plates clattered softly. Through the door, Serafina pieced together the rhythm of a family functioning on fumes. Every movement efficient, nothing wasted, no excess anything. She pressed her back against the hallway wall, heart beating faster than it should. This man she'd fired 6 hours ago wasn't out drinking, wasn't making excuses, wasn't raging at the universe. He was cracking eggs carefully, probably counting them, probably dividing them in his head to make sure his kids got more than he did. The girl, Iris, he'd called her, spoke again. "Miss Parker said I need new shoes for gym class." Elias didn't answer right away. "We'll figure it out, sweetheart." She said by Friday. "I know. That's 3 days." "I know, Iris." The girl went quiet. In that silence, Serafina heard something worse than complaints. Resignation. A 6-year-old already learning that asking for things meant watching her father break a little more. Serafina's chest tightened. She'd built an empire on efficiency, on cutting waste, on making hard calls that kept hundreds employed. But standing in this hallway, she realized she'd never once asked what those hard calls cost the people on the other side. Footsteps approached the door. Serafina's pulse spiked. She turned toward the stairs, moving fast but quiet, her heels suddenly feeling like weapons instead of armor. She made it back to the car, breathing harder than the 3 flights should have required. "Drive," she said. Her driver pulled away from the curb. In the side mirror, Serafina watched the buildings shrink behind them, crooked, tired, barely standing, just like the man inside it. She opened her tablet, pulled up Elias Monroe's file, scanned past the termination report to the older records underneath. Performance reviews from 2 years ago. Exceptional, reliable, recommended for advancement. Then a gap. Then attendance flags, tardiness, missed shifts. Then a single HR note, dated 18 months back, buried under supervisory comments. Employee declined promotion, cited childcare constraints. Serafina scrolled further. Emergency contact, none listed. Marital status, widowed. The word hit like cold water. She tapped the note, opening the attached file. Spouse deceased, medical emergency, no prior diagnosis. 2 dependents, ages 4 and 7, at time of death. Serafina closed the tablet, put it face down on her lap, stared out the window at the city blurring past. Glass and steel and lights that only looked beautiful when you didn't have to count the cost of keeping them on. She'd fired a man who'd lost everything except his children. Fired him for being late to a job he'd taken instead of a promotion because nobody else could pick his kids up from school. Her throat felt tight. That should have been enough. That should have been the moment she understood. But the real shock, the one that would crack her world open, was still coming. Because late that night, long after she'd returned to her penthouse, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Emergency response, building fire, 3rd district, multiple families displaced. Her hands went cold. She clicked the link. And there, in the background of a photo showing paramedics and police tape, was a building she recognized. The one that leaned slightly left. The one where Elias Monroe was trying to make eggs stretch into hope. What happened in that building will change everything. Are you ready? Serafina's car skidded to a stop 2 blocks from the scene. Flashing lights turned the street into a nightmare of red and blue. Smoke hung in the air, thick and bitter, catching in her throat before she even opened the door. She pushed through the crowd, neighbors in bathrobes, people clutching children, someone crying into a cell phone. The building wasn't on fire, not anymore, but the damage was already done. Ambulances lined the curb. Paramedics moved fast, voices clipped and urgent. Police tape stretched across the entrance, yellow and sharp against the dark. Serafina scanned faces, panic rising in her chest like water filling a locked room. Then she saw him. Elias, sitting on the back edge of an ambulance, oxygen mask dangling from his hand. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. Blood streaked his left arm. Not a lot, but enough to stain. Next to him, Iris sat curled into a ball, face hidden against his side. And on a stretcher 10 feet away, Noel, pale, too still, oxygen mask strapped tight across his small face. Serafina's breath caught. A paramedic leaned over the boy, checking vitals, speaking into a radio. She couldn't hear the words, but she read the urgency in his movements. Elias stood suddenly, stumbling toward his son. Is he? Sir, you need to stay back. That's my son. I understand, but he has asthma. Did you check for his inhaler? He needs... We're handling it, the paramedic said, firm but not unkind. He's stable, but we need to get him to the hospital. Now. Elias's hands shook. He pressed them against his thighs, trying to steady himself, trying to hold together in front of his kids. Iris looked up, eyes red and wide. Daddy? It's okay, baby, Elias said, voice cracking. Noel's gonna be fine. But his face said he didn't believe it. Serafina took a step forward, then froze, because Elias turned and saw her. Recognition flashed across his face like lightning, shock, then anger, then something colder. You. He didn't say it out loud. He didn't have to. His eyes said everything. You did this. Serafina opened her mouth, but no sound came. What could she possibly say? What words existed that could fit into this moment? What are you doing here? Elias asked, voice flat and dangerous. She faltered. I saw the news. I wanted to. To what? His voice dropped lower. Check on your liability? The words hit like a fist. Serafina flinched but didn't look away. What happened? Elias laughed, bitter, broken. What happened? You want to know what happened? He gestured toward the building behind him, where scorch marks streaked the brick around a third-floor window. Faulty wiring. Landlord's been promising to fix it for 8 months. Tonight, it finally caught. Smoke filled the hallway so fast we barely made it out. His voice shook. Noel couldn't breathe. The smoke. His lungs. He stopped, jaw clenched so tight Serafina could see the muscle jumping. They said it's stress-induced asthma, Elias continued. Said his body's been on edge so long that any shock can trigger it. He took a step closer, eyes locked on hers. You know what causes stress in a 9-year-old? He asked quietly. Watching his dad get fired, hearing him cry in the bathroom at night because he doesn't know how we're going to eat next week. Wondering if we'll have to move again because the rent's due and there's no paycheck coming. Each word landed heavier than the last. Serafina felt her carefully constructed defenses crumbling, piece by piece. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask. The truth of it cut deeper than any insult could. Behind them, the paramedics loaded Noel into the ambulance. Iris scrambled after him, but a paramedic caught her gently. Sorry, sweetheart, only one parent can ride along. Iris's face crumpled. But I want to go with Noel. I know, baby, but... Daddy, please. Elias crouched down, pulling her close even though his hands were still shaking. Listen to me. I need you to be brave right now, okay? Can you do that? Iris nodded against his chest, but her whole body trembled. I'm going to ride with your brother, Elias said. Miss Shanice from downstairs will stay with you until I get back. I promise. What if Noel? He's going to be fine, Elias said, voice breaking. He has to be. Serafina watched this man she'd destroyed without a second thought, hold his daughter like she was the only solid thing left in the world. The ambulance doors started to close. Elias stood, kissed Iris's forehead, and ran toward the vehicle. Serafina stood frozen as the sirens wailed to life, and the ambulance pulled away, red lights disappearing into the smoke-filled night. Iris stood alone on the sidewalk, small and shaking, until a neighbor woman hurried over and wrapped her in a blanket. And Serafina realized something that made her stomach turn. She'd spent her entire career measuring value in productivity and profit. But standing here, watching a little girl try not to cry, she understood for the first time what those metrics actually cost. A child's sense of safety, a father's dignity, a family's future. She'd taken all of it with a signature in 10 minutes on a factory floor, and she couldn't give any of it back. Inside the ambulance, does Noel open his eyes, or does the monitor flatline? Serafina didn't sleep. She sat in her penthouse office, city lights sprawling below her like a circuit board, and opened Elias Monroe's file for the 3rd time that night. This time, she read everything. Hired, 9 years ago, started as a general floor worker, promoted twice within 3 years. Supervisor noted, most reliable employee on shift, natural leader. Marriage, recorded in company benefits 7 years ago. Spouse name, Diane Monroe. 2 dependents added shortly after. The file showed a man building a life, steady, unremarkable, solid. Then the gap. 3 years ago, the records changed. A single HR note, dated and clinical. Employee submitted bereavement leave request. Spouse deceased, medical emergency, no advance notice. 2 weeks leave approved. Then he came back. Serafina scrolled further. Performance reviews post-loss showed cracks forming slowly. Occasional tardiness. Left early twice this month, cited childcare emergency. Missed mandatory overtime, declined without sufficient notice. Then, 6 months ago, a note she'd never seen. From his direct supervisor, Marcus Trent, Monroe's struggles are related to dependent care, not work ethic. Recommend accommodation review rather than disciplinary action. Employee has saved this facility from 2 safety violations in the past year alone. Value retention. Recommendation, ignored. Serafina's hands stilled on the keyboard. She scrolled back up, searched for the word promotion. There, 18 months ago, Monroe offered shift supervisor position, 18% raise, better hours, medical upgrade. Employee response, declined. Reason given, unable to accommodate schedule change due to dependent care constraints. Serafina leaned back in her chair. He'd turned down more money, turned down better hours, turned down security because no one else could pick his kids up from school. Her throat felt tight. She clicked into the disciplinary file, the one she'd signed off on without reading. The safety protocol violation, the reason she'd fired him. Report filed by Gerald Stokes, Senior Operations Manager. Incident. Employee Monroe bypassed machine lockout procedure, resulting in potential safety hazard. Violation of Section 14.3, immediate termination recommended. Serafina frowned. Something about the wording felt off. She opened the factory safety logs, cross-referencing the date. And there it was. A second report, filed by a different supervisor, time-stamped 40 minutes earlier. Machine 7 malfunction detected by Monroe. Employee manually overrode automatic shutdown to prevent hydraulic pressure buildup. Action likely prevented catastrophic equipment failure and injury to nearby workers. Recommend commendation. Serafina's blood went cold. She pulled both reports side by side on her screen. Same incident, 2 completely different narratives. Stokes's report painted Elias as reckless. The other report painted him as a hero. She dug deeper. Stokes had submitted his report directly to HR, bypassing the floor supervisor entirely. It had been flagged as urgent, pushed through approvals in under 2 hours. The other report, buried in routine logs, never made it past middle management. Serafina's jaw tightened. She opened her company directory, searched Gerald Stokes's record, and found another document, a safety audit from 2 months prior. Citation: inadequate maintenance protocols on machines 6 and 7, critical components overdue for inspection. Responsible party: Gerald Stokes. Penalty: pending review. She sat back, hands trembling. Stokes had been covering his own negligence, and Elias had been the scapegoat. The man who'd saved lives, including his own, had been fired to protect an executive's reputation. Serafina's screen blurred. She'd built her career on precision, on seeing through noise, on cutting through bureaucracy to find truth. But she'd failed the only test that mattered. She'd believed paperwork over people. Her phone buzzed. A message from her assistant. Morning briefing moved to 7 a.m. Board wants update on factory incident. Serafina stared at the message. Then she stood, grabbed her coat, and walked out of her office. Not toward the boardroom, toward the hospital. At 6:47 a.m., Serafina pushed through the emergency room doors. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of antiseptic burned her nose. She asked for Noel Monroe at the desk. The nurse glanced up, tired. Family only. Serafina hesitated. I'm his father's employer. The nurse's expression didn't change. Then you're not family. Please, I just need to know if he's stable, the nurse said flatly. Admitted for observation. That's all I can tell you. Serafina nodded, stepped back. She turned toward the waiting area and froze. Elias sat in a plastic chair near the window, head in his hands. His shirt was still stained with blood. His shoulders shook slightly, like he was trying to hold something inside that was too big to contain. Iris was curled up beside him, asleep, head resting on his lap. Serafina's chest tightened. She took one step forward. Elias looked up. Their eyes met. and for a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Elias spoke, voice raw and barely audible. "If you're here to make sure I won't sue, don't worry. I can't afford a lawyer anyway." The words hit like gravel. Serafina shook her head. "That's not why I'm here." "Then why?" She didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound hollow, so she told the truth. "Because I was wrong." Elias stared at her. "That's it? You were wrong?" "Yes." He laughed, bitter and broken. "You think saying that fixes anything?" "No," Serafina said quietly. "I don't." Silence stretched between them, heavy and sharp. Then Elias looked away. "My son almost died tonight," his voice cracked. "Not because of the fire, because his body's been breaking down for months and I couldn't see it. Because I've been so focused on keeping us fed and housed that I missed how much weight he's lost. How he stopped laughing. How he flinches every time someone raises their voice." He looked back at her, eyes red and hollow. "You didn't just fire me. You pushed my kid past his limit." Serafina felt something inside her break. "I know," she whispered. And for the first time in her life, power felt like the cruelest thing she'd ever been given. What Serafina discovers next will destroy everything she thought she knew. But will it be enough? Serafina sat in her office at 9 a.m., staring at the wall instead of her screen. She'd left the hospital an hour ago. Elias hadn't said another word to her, just turned his back, dismissing her like furniture. She deserved worse. Her assistant knocked once, then entered without waiting. "The board's asking for you." "Tell them I'm busy." "They said it's urgent, about the Monroe termination." Serafina's head snapped up. "What about it?" Her assistant shifted uncomfortably. "Legals flagged it. Someone leaked the incident report to a journalist. They're asking questions about workplace safety." Serafina stood. "Who leaked it?" "We don't know yet, but they want you in the conference room. Now." 10 minutes later, Serafina walked into a room full of men in tailored suits and women with expressions carved from stone. Gerald Stokes sat at the far end, arms crossed, face unreadable. Her stomach turned. "Serafina," the board chair began, voice clipped. "We have a situation." "I'm aware." "Then you're aware that this termination is about to become a PR nightmare. A single father, widowed, children in crisis. This is the kind of story that goes viral." "It's also the truth," Serafina said. The room went quiet. Stokes leaned forward. "With all due respect, the truth is that Monroe violated safety protocol. We followed procedure. End of story." Serafina turned to him slowly. "Is it?" His eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I reviewed the incident logs last night," Serafina said. "All of them, including the one you buried." Stokes's jaw tightened. "I don't know what you're—" "Monroe didn't violate protocol," Serafina cut in. "He prevented a disaster, one caused by your failure to maintain equipment." The room erupted. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "This is highly inappropriate." Serafina raised her voice. "Machine 7 was overdue for inspection by 60 days. Monroe manually overrode the shutdown because the hydraulic pressure was building toward failure. If he hadn't acted, that machine would have exploded. 3 workers were standing within blast range." She turned to Stokes. "You altered the report to cover your own negligence, and I signed off on a termination without verifying the facts." Stokes stood, face red. "This is absurd. You're basing this on a hunch." "I'm basing it on your own maintenance logs," Serafina said coldly, "which I've already forwarded to the safety board." The room went silent. Stokes stared at her, jaw working, fury and fear battling in his eyes. The board chair cleared his throat. "Serafina, even if this is true, the damage is done. Reinstating Monroe now looks like damage control." "Because it is," Serafina said. "Then we bury this, quietly, settle if necessary, move on." Serafina looked around the table, at faces that had built empires on efficiency, on cutting losses, on protecting the bottom line above everything else. She'd been one of them. But standing in that hospital, watching a man hold his daughter while his son fought to breathe, she realized something she couldn't unlearn. Power without accountability wasn't strength. It was cowardice. "No," Serafina said. The chair blinked. "No? We're not burying this. We're going public." The room exploded again. "That's insane. You'll destroy shareholder confidence. The press will crucify us." "Good," Serafina said. "Maybe they should." She turned and walked toward the door. Stokes's voice followed her, sharp and venomous. "You do this, you're done. The board will vote you out within a week." Serafina stopped, turned, looked him in the eye. "Then I'll have something in common with Elias Monroe," she said quietly. "Except I'll deserve it." She walked out. Behind her, chaos erupted, but she didn't look back. Because for the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to choose right over easy. And it was the most terrifying thing she'd ever done. At 2 p.m., Serafina stood in front of a press conference she'd called herself. No PR team, no lawyers, no script. Cameras lined the back wall. Journalists filled the seats, pens poised, eyes hungry. She stepped to the microphone. "My name is Serafina Blackwell. I'm the CEO of Meridian Industrial, and I'm here to tell you that I made a mistake." The room leaned forward. 2 days ago, I terminated an employee named Elias Monroe for a safety violation. I was wrong. The report I based that decision on was falsified by a senior executive to cover his own negligence. Mr. Monroe didn't violate protocol. He prevented a catastrophic failure that could have killed multiple workers. Cameras flashed. "I fired a man who saved lives. I fired him without verifying the facts. And because of that, his family has suffered in ways I can't undo." Her voice steadied. "Effective immediately, Elias Monroe is reinstated with full back pay, medical coverage for his family, and protections that ensure he can never be retaliated against for this incident. Additionally, I'm implementing a company-wide audit of all safety protocols and termination procedures." She paused. "This doesn't make it right, but it's a start." The room erupted with questions, but Serafina stepped away from the microphone and walked out. She didn't go back to the office. She went to the hospital. This time, when she walked into the waiting room, Elias looked up. He didn't smile, didn't thank her. He just stared, exhausted and wary, like a man who'd been burned too many times to believe in apologies. "I saw the press conference," he said quietly. Serafina nodded. "I meant every word. That doesn't change what happened." "I know." Silence settled between them, fragile, uncertain. Then Iris stirred, blinking awake. She looked up at Serafina with wide, cautious eyes. "Are you the lady from Daddy's work?" she asked. Serafina's throat tightened. "Yes." "Are you going to fire him again?" The question hit like a knife. Elias put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Iris." "No," Serafina said, voice breaking. "Never again." Iris studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, she nodded. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was the first crack in a wall that would take years to come down. And Serafina realized something she'd never understood before. Redemption wasn't a moment. It was every moment after. What will Elias do with the power to refuse her? Will he take it, or will something even more shocking force them together? The hospital cafeteria coffee tasted like burnt rubber, but Serafina drank it anyway. She'd been sitting in the same plastic chair for 3 hours, watching the hallway where Noelle's room was located. Elias hadn't come out, neither had Iris. A doctor emerged, clipboard in hand, walking with the kind of measured steps that meant either very good news or very bad. Serafina stood without thinking. The doctor knocked once on Noelle's door, then disappeared inside. 5 minutes passed like 5 hours. When the door opened again, Elias stepped out. His eyes were red-rimmed but dry. He looked like a man who'd run out of tears years ago and was now operating on something harder: necessity. He saw Serafina across the hall, walk toward her. She braced for anger, for accusations, for the rage he had every right to unleash. Instead, he just looked exhausted. "He's stable," Elias said quietly. "They're keeping him another night for observation, but he's breathing on his own now." Relief crashed through Serafina so hard, her knees almost buckled. "That's good, that's—" "Don't," Elias cut in. Not angry, just tired. "Don't act like you care." "I do care." "You care now," he corrected. "You didn't care when it mattered." The truth of it landed heavy between them. Serafina opened her mouth, then closed it. Because what could she say? That she'd made a mistake? That she'd fix it? Words felt useless against the weight of what she'd done. "I watched the press conference," Elias said after a long silence. "Saw you throw that executive under the bus. Saw you reinstate me with benefits I'll probably never use because I don't trust this company anymore." He looked at her directly. "You think that makes us even?" "No," Serafina said. "I don't." "Good." Elias turned to walk back toward Noel's room, then stopped. "My son asked me this morning if I was going back to work. You know what I told him?" Serafina shook her head. "I told him I didn't know, because I don't know if I can walk back into that building and pretend everything's fine. I don't know if I can look at those machines and not remember the day you destroyed my kid's sense of safety." His voice cracked. "You gave me my job back, but you can't give me back what you took." He walked away. Serafina stood frozen, coffee cup cold in her hand, watching him disappear behind the door. And she realized something that made her stomach twist. Redemption wasn't something you earned with a press conference. It was something you had to bleed for, one quiet moment at a time. But the real shock was still coming. Because what Serafina didn't know, what nobody knew yet, was that the story was about to break wide open in a way that would change everything. Will the truth destroy them both, or force them to face something neither saw coming? The email arrived at 11:47 p.m. Subject line: "You need to see this." Serafina clicked it open, heart already racing for reasons she couldn't name. It was from her head of security, a man who never sent emails this late unless something had gone catastrophically wrong. Attached was a video file. Factory security footage. Date stamp. The day she fired Elias. Serafina's hand hovered over the mouse. She didn't want to watch, didn't want to see herself make the same mistake twice, but she clicked play anyway. The footage showed Machine 7 from an overhead angle. Workers moved around it in practiced rhythms, their movements efficient and synchronized. Then, a flicker. The pressure gauge spiked. Elias noticed it first. He stepped closer, hand already reaching for the emergency override panel. But someone grabbed his arm. Gerald Stokes. Serafina leaned forward, pulse hammering. On the screen, Stokes was shaking his head, gesturing toward the gauge like it was nothing. Elias pulled his arm free, pointing at the reading with increasing urgency. Stokes waved him off, walked away. Elias stood there for 3 seconds, frozen in the kind of decision that separates heroes from everyone else. Then he moved. He bypassed the lockout, manually vented the pressure, and brought the machine to a controlled stop. 2 workers who'd been standing near the hydraulic line didn't even know how close they'd come to dying. The footage continued. 10 minutes later, Stokes returned, with a write-up already prepared. He handed it to Elias, who read it with his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful. Then Elias said something. Serafina couldn't hear it, but she could read his lips clearly enough. "This isn't what happened." Stokes shrugged, pointed toward the exit, and Elias, knowing he had no power, no leverage, no way to fight back, walked away. The video ended. Serafina sat in the dark, hands shaking, rage building in her chest like steam in a sealed pipe. Stokes hadn't just covered his mistake. He'd targeted Elias specifically, because Elias had been the one person willing to call him out. Her phone buzzed. Another email, same sender. There's more. She opened the second attachment. This one was an internal memo dated 6 months ago. A complaint filed by Elias Monroe regarding unsafe maintenance schedules on Machine 7. Recipient, Gerald Stokes. Action taken, none. Serafina scrolled further. Another memo, 3 months ago. Another safety concern raised by Elias. Again sent to Stokes. Again ignored. A third memo, 5 weeks ago. This time, Elias had copied HR. HR response. Matter forwarded to Department Supervisor for review. Department Supervisor, Gerald Stokes. Serafina closed her laptop, pressed her palms against her eyes until she saw stars. Elias hadn't just saved lives the day she fired him. He'd been trying to save them for months. And the system she'd built, had silenced him at every turn, then punished him when he refused to stay quiet. She grabbed her phone and called her head of security. He answered on the first ring. You saw it. Why wasn't this flagged earlier? Serafina demanded. It was buried in archive footage. Someone had to know what they were looking for to find it. Who sent it to you? A pause. Anonymous tip. Came through a secure server. But whoever it was knew exactly where to look. Serafina's mind raced. Do we know who? No, but I'd bet money it's someone inside the company, someone who's been watching Stokes for a while. Serafina ended the call, sat in the dark, and realized the story she thought she understood was actually something far worse. This wasn't just about one bad executive. It was about a system that punished honesty and rewarded silence. A system she'd created. At 6 a.m., Serafina walked into Gerald Stokes' office without knocking. He looked up from his desk, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Serafina, I wasn't expecting. You're done, she said. His expression didn't change. Excuse me? I saw the footage, all of it, the pressure spike, you stopping Elias, the memos he sent you that you ignored. Stokes set down his coffee slowly. I don't know what you think you saw. I saw you nearly kill 3 people to protect your job, Serafina said coldly, and I saw you destroy a good man to cover it up. Stokes stood. You're making a mistake. I already made one, Serafina said. I believed you. His face hardened. You think firing me fixes this? The board will never back you, especially not after your little press conference stunt yesterday. Then I'll go to the safety board, and the press, and anyone else who'll listen. Stokes laughed, short and bitter. You'll destroy this company. Then maybe it deserves to be destroyed. The room went silent. Stokes stared at her, jaw working. Then he grabbed his jacket and walked toward the door. He stopped in the doorway. You think Elias Monroe is a hero? You think he's going to thank you for this? Serafina didn't answer. He won't, Stokes said, because people like him don't trust people like us, and they never will. He walked out. Serafina stood alone in his office, breathing hard, trying to steady herself. Because Stokes was right about one thing. Elias didn't trust her, and she was about to find out if trust could ever be rebuilt after it had been shattered so completely. What happens when the truth comes out? Will it save them or destroy what little remains? The story hit the news at noon. Serafina sat in her office watching it unfold on every screen, cable news, social media, industry blogs, all of them running the same headline in different words. CEO exposes corporate cover-up, fires executive who framed hero worker. Her phone exploded with notifications, messages from board members, calls from investors, emails from lawyers. She ignored all of them, because there was only one person whose reaction mattered, and he wasn't calling. At 2:30 p.m., her assistant knocked. There's someone here to see you. I'm not taking meetings today. It's Elias Monroe. Serafina's breath caught. She stood, smoothed her jacket, and nodded. Elias walked in looking exactly like he had 3 days ago. Worn jeans, work boots, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. But his eyes were different now. Sharper, harder. "I saw the news," he said without preamble. Serafina nodded. "I wanted you to know the truth." "The truth." Elias laughed, but there was no humor in it. "The truth is I've been fighting this battle alone for 6 months. The truth is I sent memos, filed complaints, did everything right, and nobody listened." "I know." "You don't know," Elias said, voice rising. "You think watching a video makes you understand? You think firing one guy fixes the system that protected him?" Serafina flinched but held his gaze. "You're right, it doesn't." "Then what are you doing here?" Elias asked. "What's the point of all this?" "I'm trying to make it right." "You can't." The words hung between them like smoke. Elias ran a hand over his face. "My son is traumatized. My daughter has nightmares. I've got medical bills I can't pay and a job I don't know if I can go back to. You giving me back pay and benefits doesn't change any of that." "I know," Serafina said quietly, "but it's a start." "A start toward what?" Elias demanded. "Redemption? You think you get to feel better because you admitted you were wrong?" "No," Serafina said. "I think I get to spend the rest of my career proving I meant it." Elias stared at her. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then slowly he nodded. "Okay." Serafina blinked. "Okay?" "I don't forgive you," Elias said. "I don't trust you, but I'll give you a chance to prove you're different from every other executive who's ever lied to my face." He turned toward the door, then stopped. "One condition. Anything. I want safety oversight, real oversight, not some committee that meets once a quarter and rubber stamps reports. I want workers on the floor involved in every decision that affects their lives." Serafina nodded. "Done. And I want it in writing, with penalties if the company doesn't follow through. You'll have it by tomorrow." Elias studied her face, searching for lies. Finding none, he nodded once. "Then maybe we can start rebuilding. Not trust, but something." He walked out. Serafina stood alone in her office, hands shaking, throat tight. She'd been given a second chance, but she knew the truth Elias hadn't said out loud. Second chances only mattered if you didn't waste them, and she couldn't afford to fail again. But what neither of them knew was that this story was about to take one final turn, a turn that would test everything they thought they'd learned. 3 weeks later, Elias walked back into the factory. The noise hit him first. The roar of machines, the hiss of hydraulics, the rhythmic clang of metal on metal. Sounds that used to feel like home now made his chest tight. Workers glanced up as he passed. Some nodded, others looked away. Marcus Trent, his old supervisor, met him at Machine 7. "Monroe, good to have you back." Elias nodded but didn't smile. "They've made some changes," Marcus continued. "New safety protocols, weekly inspections, and we've got a workers' committee now. You're on it." "I heard." Marcus hesitated. "You okay?" "I'm here," Elias said. "That's all I've got right now." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder once, then walked away. Elias stood in front of Machine 7, staring at the control panel like it was a test he hadn't studied for. His hands found the familiar positions automatically, muscle memory stronger than fear. He ran the startup sequence. The machine hummed to life. And for the first time in 3 weeks, Elias felt something other than anger or exhaustion. He felt useful. At noon, Serafina appeared on the factory floor. She'd never done that before, never walked among the machines, never stood where the noise made conversation impossible. But she was here, now. Workers noticed. Conversations stopped. Eyes tracked her movement across the floor. She walked directly to Elias. He saw her coming and straightened, wiping grease from his hands. "I wanted to see how your first day back was going," Serafina said, raising her voice over the noise. "It's fine," Elias replied. "Just fine?" He looked at her directly. "What do you want me to say? That everything's perfect now? That I'm grateful?" "No," Serafina said. "I want you to tell me the truth." Elias studied her face. "The truth is, I don't know if I can do this. Stand here like nothing happened. Pretend that memo you sent about new safety protocols makes up for my son's hospital bills." "The company's covering those," Serafina said. "All of them." Elias blinked. "What?" "Medical expenses, therapy for Noelle and Iris if they need it, and a housing stipend so you can move somewhere safer." She handed him an envelope. "It's all in here. No strings. No fine print." Elias opened it slowly, scanned the documents inside. His hands started shaking. "Why?" he asked. "Because it's right," Serafina said simply, "and because I can't fix the past, but I can make sure your kids have a future." Elias looked up at her, eyes bright. "I still don't trust you." "I know. But this," he gestured to the envelope, "this is more than I expected." "It's less than you deserve," Serafina said. For the first time since she fired him, Elias's expression softened. Just slightly, just enough. "Thank you," he said quietly. Serafina nodded. "Thank you for coming back, for giving this place another chance." "I didn't do it for the company," Elias said. "I did it for my kids. They need stability, and until I find something better, this is what I've got." "Then I'll make sure it's worth staying for," Serafina said. She turned to leave, then stopped. "Elias," he looked up, "if there's ever another problem, any problem, you come directly to me. No memos, no chain of command. Me." Elias nodded slowly. "Okay." She walked away. And Elias stood there, envelope in hand, feeling something he hadn't felt in months. Hope. Small, fragile, but real. Behind him, Marcus approached. "Was that Blackwell?" "Yeah," Elias said. "What'd she want?" Elias tucked the envelope into his back pocket. "To prove she's different." "Is she?" Elias watched Serafina disappear through the factory doors. "I don't know yet, but maybe." And for the first time since his world collapsed, that maybe felt like enough. But what comes next will test that hope in ways neither of them expected. Because healing isn't a moment, it's a battle fought every single day. 6 months later, Elias stood in front of a crowd he never thought he'd face. The factory floor had been transformed into an auditorium. Rows of chairs filled with workers, executives, press. Cameras lined the back wall. Serafina stood off to the side watching. Elias cleared his throat, hands gripping the podium to keep them steady. "My name is Elias Monroe," he began. 6 months ago, I was fired from this company for doing my job, for trying to keep people safe." The room was silent. "I was angry. I wanted to walk away and never come back. But I didn't, because walking away meant letting the system win, and I'd already lost too much to let that happen." He looked out at the faces staring back at him, some familiar, some not. "This company isn't perfect. It's made mistakes, big ones. But what matters isn't the mistakes, it's what happens after." His voice steadied. "Today we're launching a worker safety board with real power, real oversight, real consequences when things go wrong. It's not everything, but it's something." Applause rippled through the crowd. Elias stepped back from the podium. Serafina approached, extending her hand. He looked at it for a long moment, then shook it. Not warmly, not with trust, but with acknowledgement. They'd both survived something that should have destroyed them. And survival, Elias had learned, was its own kind of victory. After the ceremony, Elias found Serafina alone in the hallway. "You did good today," she said. "So did you," Elias replied, then paused. "I still don't trust you completely." "I know, but I'm starting to believe you're trying." Serafina nodded. "That's all I can ask for." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Elias pulled out his phone, swiping to a photo. He turned it toward her. Noelle and Iris, smiling at the camera, standing in front of a new apartment building. "They're doing better," Elias said quietly. "Noelle's back in school. Iris stopped having nightmares." Serafina's throat tightened. "I'm glad." "Me too." Elias pocketed the phone. "I won't forget what you did, but I also won't forget what you're doing now. And that matters." He walked away. Serafina stood alone in the hallway, feeling the weight of 6 months of work. 6 months of rebuilding, of listening, of learning to lead with humility instead of power. She'd learned something she never expected. Redemption wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, daily, unglamorous. It was showing up even when forgiveness felt impossible. It was earning trust one small action at a time. And it was accepting that some wounds never fully healed. They just taught you how to move differently. Elias had given her something most people never got, a second chance to be better. And she'd spend the rest of her career proving he hadn't made a mistake. Because power, she'd finally learned, wasn't about control. It was about accountability. And accountability meant standing in the wreckage you created and building something better from the ashes. Even if it took forever. Even if you never fully earned forgiveness. Even if the only reward was knowing you'd tried. That was enough. That had to be enough. And some days, it was. Thank you for watching this story of redemption, accountability, and the cost of power. If this moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We have more inspiring stories coming that will challenge how you see the world. Because the best stories aren't about perfect people. They're about people who chose to be better, even when it cost them everything. Don't miss what's next. Subscribe now.